This conference will now be recorded.
You'll find, sorry, I just got interrupted then. You'll find my book online, so that's where you can find that. The next, we've got about 90 minutes. We probably won't use the whole 90 minutes, but what I want to do over that 90 minutes is talk in a few little spaces. I'll talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, then I'll pause, and if you guys have got questions, I'll answer questions then. Then I'll do another 10 or 15 minutes, pause, answer questions, and then the last bit. So I'll do four sections, and I'll pause in between. So if you have some questions, I'll address them as I go rather than do them at the end. This is about finance business partnering. It's not about being a better accountant. We assure you guys are really good at being good accountants. We focus on being a good finance business partner, and they're not the same thing. So they're slightly different, and as you see me work through this, you'll see those differences. All right, what I want you to do is just in your chat, just answer this question. How would non-finance describe the finance department? So if you guys can just type into your chat the answer to this. Think of your organisation, think of the non-finance people in your organisation. How would they describe your finance team and your finance function? You guys can just type in some words, that would be helpful. No right or wrong answer. Bookkeepers, bean counters, thanks Sandeep. Very good, non-practical. It's a bit harsh, bean counters. Maybe true. Couple more. How would your non-finance colleagues describe the finance department? Problem people, wow. Horses with blinkers, Sandeep's all over this. Another couple of words, anything, as I said, no right or wrong. Obstacle makers, police, very good. Cost centre, yep. CFNO, impractical. Money police, okay, I'm getting a bit of a theme here, and I think we're all picking up the theme. I would suggest these aren't, some of these aren't positive words. I wouldn't thought if I wanted to be a good finance business partner, these are words that I'd like someone to be describing me as, but that's all right. And those words, I would hazard to guess that none of those words are things that would make you highly influential, which is part of the problem. If we've got non-finance people describing us as that, then it's going to be very hard to start to influence them, and that's what finance business partnering is about. So very good, thanks for that. All right, move on to the next page, the accountant's paradigm. So the accountant's paradigm, I'm going to get a little bit funky and draw on the screen here because I can. The accountant's paradigm, so the important thing about a paradigm is a paradigm's a thought or something we have in our head that we hold as true and true about the world. So it could be true, it could not be true, but it's a story that we have in our heads. And the good things about paradigms is that they can be right and they can be wrong. And the best thing about them is that they can be changed. And the accountant's paradigm is this, as I write on the screen, a good, can you guys see what I'm writing on the screen, I hope? A good accountant equals a good finance business partner. This is the accountant's paradigm that most accountants out there have in their head. A good accountant equals a good finance business partner. A good accountant does not equal a good finance business partner. They're very, very different things. You can be a great accountant, terrible at finance business partnering. Likewise, you can be a great finance business partner, terrible as an accountant, okay? The best finance business partner that I've ever worked with in my entire career, not an accountant. He's never done accounting at university or college. He's never done his qualification, CA or CPA or CIMA or whatever it is that you choose to do. He hasn't done any of that. He's hands down the best finance business partner that I know. And the reason for that is because he has all these other things going for him that aren't related to technical. So accountants have this belief that if we get more technical and more letters after our name and so on and so forth, we'll become better finance business partners, and it's not true, it's not helpful. What I will do is now I will just take that off the screen. You guys could all see that, I'm hoping. And what I'm going to do is go into the next screen. I'm going to draw again and try and demonstrate what's going on here with this account paradigm. So if I just draw this on the screen, I'll ask again, can you guys see this on the screen? If you could just say yes in the chat box so I know that you guys can see what I'm doing. Yes, no, yes, we can. Thank you, Venkatish Krishnan. Cheers. So with our accountants think that our technical skills is what will make us brilliant. What happens with your technical skills is that you start your career, you go to university or college, you learn about accounting, and then you do your professional qualification, and you learn the technical aspects of finance really, really quickly, and your technical skills lift up really, really quickly and peak around the time that you finish your formal qualification. So anyone out there who's a year or two after qualification, congratulations. Technically, this is the smartest you'll ever be. This is the best it'll ever get for you, because after that, what happens is your technical skills drop off, and they look like this until one day you're over here, and that's about where I am. So my technical skills are not as good as what they used to be when I got qualified up here. Now that is because I work in organisations. So if you're working in a professional services industry like Big Four or something like that, your technical skills, they will be quite high because people pay you for your technical advice. As soon as you go into an organisation though, the technical skills are defined by the role that you are working on. Yeah, so your technical skills are defined by the role that you're in. So, for instance, for me, I work in a company called Lend-Lease, which is a global construction company. This is about 12 years ago, and at the time, I had to do all the share plan accounting. So transactions would come in around our share plans, and I had to do the accounting attached to it. Now, at the time, I knew that IFRS accounting standard very, very highly. I knew it back to front. I knew how to account for things. If you asked me now, 12 or 13 years later, I wouldn't have a clue about the share plan accounting standard. I don't care about it. I don't look at it. I don't need it. It really doesn't interest me. I'm over here. When I was working in it, I was right there because I was in it every day. And this is normal, but we have this belief that if we become more technical, we'll be better as finance business partners. And it's not true because there's other things going on. Okay, so what are the other things? If there wasn't other things going on, the guys that are here would be the best finance business partners, and these guys would be the worst ones. Okay, so there must be something else going on. The first thing that's going on is gaining your credibility in an organisation. So taking that technical skill set and being able to apply it in the organisation that you're in. And this starts off very, very slowly. So you start your job and you might be given some tasks to do and some things to do, and it starts off quite slowly, and then you get involved in the business and you start to solve problems for them, and you start to sort out issues that are in the business, and it takes off until you get higher in your career up here, or it flattens off and you have a team of people around you who do this for you. Within this, it's a bit of a step ladder. So you might go along for a bit and you don't do a lot of work, and then you confront a problem or someone asks you to solve a problem. So you spend your time working out, okay, well, how does that work? How do I apply my technical knowledge to solve that problem in the organisation? And the more of this you do, the quicker your credibility will build in an organisation. If you just sit and be passive at your desk and don't inject yourself into issues in your organisation, that line will be very flat and you won't build your credibility up. So you've got to inject yourself into problems and issues and take that technical knowledge that you have and solve problems for your organisation. And the more times you can do that, the steeper this curve becomes and the quicker you gain credibility in an organisation. So the best example I can use for this is think of yourself as a chef. When you first start cooking and you learn how to cook, you just follow the recipe. Okay, the recipe's there. You do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That's the technical aspect of what you're cooking. When you start to graduate and become better at cooking, you don't need the recipe anymore, and you can work out what's going on. You can taste the food, sense what's not there, and fix it up and solve the problem. And you only get that by cooking more and doing more things and applying your technical knowledge to the problem that you've got in front of you. And the best of the best chefs, they only get that through doing that over and over and over and over again for a long period of time, solving problems, sorting issues out. And that's how you build your credibility up really quickly. You can't just have technical skills and expect to have credibility. It doesn't work. You've got to be able to apply them. You've got to be able to be a master chef, not just someone who can read a recipe. So that's your credibility curve. Once you start to solve problems and issues, you can see yourself climbing up that credibility curve. The third part is, so once you've got your credibility, you can then look at trying to influence people. Okay, so you can't start to try and influence people if you haven't got your credibility sorted first. And your influencing comes from your behaviours. And this looks like this. For an accountant, this is something that we don't think of a lot in our early part of our careers. And then we work out that our behaviours are really, really important. Things that we say, the things that we do, and the way that we be, and how we turn up, and our haircut, and our clothes, and the shoes that we wear, and the things we eat for lunch. All these things are being noticed by the people in your organisation, and they're creating a perception of you. This starts off very slowly, and then it takes off. Once we work it out, it takes off very, very quickly. The best people in organisations work this out really, really, really quickly, and they align their behaviours to the leaders of the organisation that they're in, and the influential people in the organisation in. And they get up the career ladder very quickly, even if they're technically inept, which isn't fair for an accountant, but that's just the way it is. That's how organisations work. So we've got to be really attuned to our behaviours. Sorry, just taking a drink. An example of this, when about 5 or 6 years ago, I was in a senior finance role, part of a team that was about 20, 25 of us senior leaders, and we used to meet about 3 times a year, go off site somewhere and talk about the business and what we were doing and get some training. And we had a session, and it was on Sydney Harbour. So think about Sydney Harbour in the middle of winter. It was about 12 degrees, quite a windy day. And the place we were at was this dance studio. So like an open warehouse at the end of a pier right on Sydney Harbour. So it was quite cold. And I'd spent the weekend, I'd been sick on the weekend. I'd had man flu and wasn't feeling that good. So I turned up not feeling the best, had a bit of a temperature, had my jacket on, and I sort of sat there the whole time with my arms crossed like this. Wasn't really engaged as what I would normally be, but that's just because I didn't feel too well. But I got involved in as much as I could. The next day, I had my director, who's on the executive team, come to me and ask me, how did yesterday go? And I said, well, it was fine. I got involved and got engaged. It all made sense to me. And he said to me, the exec team didn't think so. The exec team thinks that you were disengaged and that you weren't interested, and we're quite concerned about what that means for you. Now, that is because I sat there sending out body language signals that they weren't receptive to. But for me, that was my normal. I wasn't feeling that well, but they didn't know that. So that perception that they had of me was very different to how I was feeling. And that's a big problem when those two things are miles apart. You need the perception that people have of you to be very close to what you want them to think of you. When it's really, really close, these behaviours work really, really well. Okay, because people are watching you all the time. They're observing little things about you, and then they're going over here and talking to other people about you who haven't been in that situation, and then they go over here and they talk to other people about you. And this is happening all the time in your organisation. So you have to be really attuned, conscious and aware of your behaviours, because that's what helps you influence people. So you got to get your credibility right. The middle line, get your credibility and start solving problems for the organisation. And from that, you can start to get your influence through your behaviours. It's really important that your behaviours, you're conscious about them and thinking about them all the time. I'm just going to take that off the screen. and go to this question. So I asked you guys a question before. Now I want you to answer this question. Give me one word to describe the best finance business partner you've ever worked with. Problem solver. Thanks, Mohammed. Efficient. Thanks, Christian. With an open mind. Thank you, Veronica. Business commercial sense. Strategic thinker. Couple more. Understanding. Cool. Interesting. Likeable, I would have thought, when you're saying cool, in the sense that cool's a good thing. Okay, so that takes business problem as our problem. Influencer, owns things. Okay, these are good words: dynamic, sociable. So you're talking about, what you're talking about here are descriptive words of someone that you probably would want to work with and who would be influential. So compare those words to what we talked about at the start of how non-finance people see the finance world. These words are very, very different. Okay, these words are very, very different, and that's what finance business partnering is. It's very, very different. The descriptors and what makes you successful are extremely different to what makes success as an accountant. Okay, you guys can still see and hear me okay, I'm assuming. Okay, so there's 7 mind shifts, 7 finance business partnering mind shifts that we talk about as a finance business partner. I'm going to pause after this slide, and then I'll take some questions if anyone has any. So if you want to be an accountant, these things on the left-hand side are going to be things that you are probably doing. If you want to be a finance business partner, they're very different, and they'll be on the right-hand side. So the first one is data to insight. So accountants deal in data and facts and numbers and all this information, whereas insights is, so what next, how do we improve? If any of you tuned into Andy Shambrook the other night, he would have talked about the Insights Mountain, and accountants getting up Insights Mountain really, really quickly, and then getting into insights and talking about how you can create action for people and start to influence them. So that's what finance business partners do versus an accountant who just provides data and information. Month end to trends. So accountants focus on month ends, finance business partners focus on trends. So think about a situation where you have an order that came in on March the 1st instead of February 29, and February's results are 5% down and March results are 5% up. An accountant will talk about and want explanations as to why they're 5% down and 5% up, whereas a finance business partner will step back and take a 30,000 feet view and look at the trend, and look at something like an MAT or something like that and go, yeah, there's nothing really going on here. The trend's still the same. There's no real issue. So accountants do things very differently, mainly because we split the year up into 12 different areas for some unknown reason and report numbers against the budget, which is made up anyway, but I won't talk into that. So that's what accountants do. FBPs deal with trends and deal with actual numbers. Accountants deal with process. Finance business partners deal in relationships. So this is important. Finance business partners don't necessarily think too badly of process. They just use their relationships to get the process done, whereas accountants stick with process. They talk about the process. You need to do this. This must be done by this date. That's the language that they use. And then they think about relationships later on, whereas a finance business partner will go up to someone and go, how are you going? How's your weekend? How's your family? Oh, you know that stuff that I'd like you to do, that I really want you to do? How's that going? And it's different. They'll start with the relationships and get the process second. So relationships are really, really important for a finance business partner. And you would have seen that in those words that you were writing before. A lot of them are driven by good relationships. Challenge to coach. So there's a lot of noise out there that finance should challenge the business. We don't agree with that. We think that challenge creates friction and tension and clashing, and all that sort of stuff just leads to resistance when neither party works too well. So you want to play more of a coaching role, and most of this comes out of the language that you use with people. So challenge language is sort of yeah, but, whereas coaching language is yes and. things like challenge is sort of, I need you to do this, whereas coaching is, oh, I would like you to do this, or I want you to do this, or showing them ways that has benefit to them. So challenging, accountants tend to challenge, FBPs tend to coach. Numbers and stories. Accountants, we're accountants. We got into it because we love numbers, and we talk about numbers all the time, and we show numbers. FBPs focus on stories. So they take the numbers and they'll build stories into those numbers. And those stories are generally specific stories, and they have emotion attached to them. And the reason they have emotion attached to them is because the brain remembers things that are attached to emotion. It doesn't remember facts and numbers. The brain stores those somewhere else in our brain. Stories that have emotion, that's attached to where our memory is, and there's more inclination to try and remember something if it's wrapped up in a story rather than just numbers. Email and conversation. So accountants deal in email, and they sit on their keyboard typing away all the time, pumping out email after email, and most of the time no one's reading them. Finance business partners deal in conversations, and they deal face to face. So this is a bit of a challenge now with COVID-19 here, but there's no excuse not to get on a Skype call or something like this and deal with face to face. It's why I've left my camera on, so that you can see me and gravitate to what I'm talking about rather than hiding behind a screen and sending emails. Finance business partnering is a face-to-face exercise, and you need to get involved with people rather than just emailing them. And I'll talk about this later with the principles. And the last one's tell to sell. So accountants tell people what's going on, finance business partners sell. So think about anyone who's ever had sales training, you're always taught to sell the benefits, not the features. Accountants will sell the features. This is what we need to happen, whereas FBPs will talk about the benefits. If you do this, this is the outcome. So it's a slightly different approach. So I'm going to pause there just for five or 10 minutes, depending on the types of questions that I get. If you guys have any questions, thoughts, builds, anyone want to virtually put their hand up and say anything, I'm more than happy to just pause for a minute there. Okay, Sandeep, the best finance business partner example you quoted, how did she be given that role without a finance background? So this was someone who had a financially literate mind, so numbers and all that sort of stuff they were very good at, but they were originally employed in a sales type analyst role, and they just injected themselves into the business and solved problems and worked stuff out and understood things. So whenever there was a problem in the organisation, people would always come up to that person. And just from that, their credibility just increased in the organisation so quickly that they were just put into roles as finance business partners because they just were good at solving problems, and they were numerically very good in their mind, even though they hadn't studied accounting or accounting standards and tax laws and all that sort of stuff. They were just very good numerically. So I'm trying to keep up here. Can you explain tell, sell again? So tell, the words probably, I would hope give it away. Tell is I'm telling you what to do. This is what I need you to do. I need you to do it. I need you to do it. I need you to do it. And sell is showing someone the benefits. So if you do this, this is what it'll look like. So I can tell you to come to my course, or I can sell it to you and say, the likelihood if you come to my course, you'll develop all these skills that might lead to a pay rise for yourself. That's the difference between telling you and selling you. We need like 10 years of experience in order to become an FBP, in order to be approved by others. Sort of depends. There's two answers to that. I think it's very hard for someone externally to come into a FBP role as a senior type person and get up to speed quickly, because you've got to understand the organisation. I'll talk about this shortly. But I do think the best FBPs have been in their roles and been doing them for a couple of years because they've spent time solving problems and learning the business. So I probably wouldn't hire someone you probably need about 10 years experience all up to be a really good finance business partner. FBPs tend to have a matrix reporting. Are they not destined to be a sandwich between? Yes. The solution to that is, which I won't talk about here, is you can either be loyal to finance or you can be loyal to the department that you're partnering. I think that's what that question is. My response to that is no, you're loyal to the organisation, and sometimes that means shifting to finance, and sometimes it means shifting to sales. But your loyalty is to the organisation, and that should be the answer to where that is. Can you give an example of attaching emotions to a financial analysis? Or am I going to answer that later? You can do that using specific. So if you've done some financial analysis and you can hang it off a specific example that you've seen in the organisation. So here's the analysis and the numbers, which are outcomes of things that are happening. If you can talk about the specifics of something that may have happened that led to that result, i.e. talk about a specific person that people in the room would know about, they can visualise that person, they can see what's happening, and it creates emotions around it. What are the top 3 skills you prioritise to be a great finance business partner? I'm going to stop the questions there because we've got some stuff coming up that'll answer that. So thanks for those questions. As I said, I'm going to do the next bit. And when I get to a certain part in that, I'll stop and pause again and do some more questions. Thanks, guys. Okay, the quiet approach to finance business partnering. We're now going to get into the stuff that's in my book up here, and we're going to talk about one specific area, which is the E in quiet, and that's where the 6 principles lie. But to give you a background on the quiet approach to finance business partnering, 4 years ago when I left the corporate world and decided I wanted to focus on this, I embarked on about 18 months worth of research to try and unpack finance business partnering. And so I started reading things, interviewing people, surveying people, all those sorts of things. And the thing that came out that was apparent to me was there was a hell of a lot of material. There was material on just about everything from, how do you collect debtors to strategy. The breadth of material is massive, but there was no real clear framework of, if I do these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll have a fair chance of being successful as a finance business partner. And if I have a problem with finance business partnering, I can diagnose it in one of these areas and have a list of things that I can do to improve myself. So that was the thing that stood out to me, was we really need a framework to work around. So I developed the quiet approach to finance business partnering. The second thing that was apparent to me in all the readings and all the things that I uncovered was finance business partnering at the time, and predominantly still is finance people telling finance people finance things. So you can pick up an article about something and read it, and you'll get about 2/3 of the way through it, and you'll think, yeah, I know this, I've read this all before. You already know it. It's all accounting type stuff that we already know. And it's just over and over and over again, finance people telling finance people finance stuff. And it's why we're getting no progress, because we already know it. There's nothing new there. So what we did in the research is we went and talked to non-finance people, because we figured if we're turning up to deliver business partnering to other people, it's probably a good idea to ask them what they want, because if they want us to give them an orange and we're turning up giving them a lemon, we're going to have a problem. So we asked people, what do you want from your finance business partners? And what came out of that was the quiet approach to finance business partnering. There's 2 components to this. The first is the actual word. So quiet, I got a lot of feedback on this around, oh, you want us to be quiet, you want finance people to be quiet, we need to challenge the business. And I said, no, quiet is around your style and how you turn up. So a lot of finance people turn up combative and challenging people and in your face and condescending and cynical, and those sorts of things really put resistance with other people. If you have someone come up to you and tell you that they know something more about it than what you do, that's really condescending, and it puts you offside and creates resistance. So that's not quiet. Quiet's more, a little bit more composed, a little bit more measured, a little bit more controlled in what you do and thinking about things, and just standing on the shoulders or sitting on the shoulders of your business partners and whispering to them, this is something that you might want to think about. So that's more what quiet means. It doesn't mean being silent. It just means being controlled and measured in what you do and being side by side with someone. So that's how quiet came out. Each letter obviously stands for something. I'll go through these quickly and then we'll get into the 6 principles. So Q is for quality. So you can't be a good finance business partner if you don't have good staff, you don't have good processes, you don't have good data, you don't have all these things, you don't keep standards to stuff, you've got people doing some crazy things. If you don't have good quality of those things, your time will be spent getting dragged down to fix numbers and do things like rework and comments like, oh, I don't have time. That's what quality is about. It's because you haven't got generally really good people in roles, or they're not doing processes and you're not keeping them accountable to those processes, and that could be anyone in the organisation. So if you've got that going on, very hard to be a good finance business partner, and it's situational. So any organisation can have an issue in this space, and in 6 months' time, that issue goes away, and vice versa. So it's changing all the time. The perfect example is if your best finance business partner leaves your business and a new one comes in, it takes a while for that quality to lift back up to where it was again. So that's all about the information you've got at your disposal. U is for understanding, so understanding your role, understanding the organisation you're in, and understanding the people within that organisation. So understanding your role, I won't talk about that too much. Understanding your organisation, so if you've got Coca-Cola and Pepsi predominantly making the same things, but they're very different organisations. Coca-Cola goes about things very differently to how Pepsi goes about things. Okay, they're different organisations. You need different organisational acumen to understand what's going on in their businesses. And then you've got the people. So every person that you deal with takes in information, processes it, and displays it to the world differently. Okay, everyone has different perceptions of what the world means. Everyone can sit at the end of this session and I could ask you to give me a rating out of 10. You'll all give me a different rating. That's perception going on, and everyone's different. And if you've got a good understanding of how you can spot how people take an information, process it and display it to the world, if you can spot that and then adapt your style to them and mirror them, you'll be a lot more successful. So you've got to understand other people to be successful. Third one's insight. This is pretty obvious. If you're not bringing insight or value to the table, really hard to be a good finance business partner. There's techniques we use, Insight Mountain, which Andy would have talked about the other day, but things like data visualization, how do you use that, how do you tell stories, all these sorts of things, how you bring insight to life. So instead of just throwing information at people, you're able to turn it into insight. E is for ethos. So just to explain this word, this is your mindset. And as I said at the start, the principles around how you operate. So every person and every profession on the planet has a set of principles that they abide by. And those principles, I know that when I'm struggling and I can't work something out, if I just stay true to these principles, then the result I get will probably be in line with what I want it to be. Okay, you'll get outcomes that are in line with what you expect if you stay true to your principles. So ethos is all about those principles. There's 6 of them, and I'll talk about them shortly. The final one's trust. If you cannot get the people below you in the finance team to trust you and you trust them, and the people at your level in the organisation that are in other functions, if you can't breed trust with them, and then the people who are above you, so your boss's boss and your boss's peers, there's not strong trust across those 3 areas, everything slows down and it's very hard to be a good finance business partner. So think about someone that you partner and you don't trust them and they don't trust you. Everything's slow, everything's exhausting, everything's painful, everything's got friction and you're clashing all the time. It's really, really hard. So you've got to instill behaviours that breed trust with these other people that you're working with, and they're different. Different behaviours to build trust with your finance team that you're leading is different to the behaviours you need with the people who are above you. And that all came out in our in our research, and it's all in the books. So yeah, trust is a massive thing. So that's the quiet approach to finance business partnering. As I said, we're going to hone in on ethos here and talk about the 6 principles. So ethos is all about 6 fundamental principles to be a great finance business partner. I'm going to talk about these, and then I'm going to pause again and see if there's any questions. So I'll go over these very quickly and then in a little bit more detail after those questions. So the first one is getting to yes. This is all about your role. Your role is to enable the organisation. You're there to take initiatives that come across your desk and make them come alive and enable them. It's not about blocking them. So it's about getting to yes. It's not about saying yes to everything. It's about having a mindset of getting to a yes. Second one, speak their language. This is all about empathy and understanding. If you're unable to speak the language of the function that you're dealing with, very hard to be effective. Third one's keep things simple. So good finance business partners make everything seem really simple. They don't make things sound complicated. They make things sound really simple and easy. Fourth one is avoid emails. So this is about communication. I'll talk about this one. I get a lot of feedback on this one. Fifth one is an appetite to understand. So this is about curiosity. How do you develop curiosity? The best finance business partners, very, very curious. If you ask them, if you gave them a car engine, they'd pick apart the car engine and put it back together just to see how it works, just because they're curious. And then the last one's the answer to any question you'll ever be asked as a finance business partner. It depends. Okay, so this talks to understanding context, understanding that everything you do is very complex and very ambiguous. So you need to be able to deal in the complex world and the ambiguous world, and you usually do that by understanding context. So they're the 6 principles. I'm going to go through each one, give a little bit more of an in-depth talk, like a 2 or 3 minute spiel about that, and give you some techniques that can help you increase these things. Before I do, looks like we've got some questions. Okay, the data one I couldn't answer. I'm not sure what, I need to know what you're looking at, but the internet's a fascinating place. There's a lot of stuff out there. Many times. Okay, so Praveen, I'll deal with that when we talk about number 4. How much time do you dedicate to building relationships versus reporting? Ben Kaddish, all my time. All my time is spent dealing with relationships rather than reporting, because once you know that, the other stuff becomes pretty easy. I would suggest if you're doing reporting, you're not a finance business partner. That's an accountant's job. Finance business partners don't do reporting. One KPI we set when we talk to finance business partners is how much time are you spending away from your desk? And if it's very close to 100%, that's a good thing. Okay, any other questions? Doesn't look like there's many questions coming through. That's cool. I will keep moving. I'll get halfway through. I'll do number 1, 2, and 3, and then pause again. And if people have got questions, I can deal with it then. As I said, Praveen, I'll deal with your email question when we get there. And then at the end, we can see if I've addressed your question. All right. Getting to yes. Okay, so getting to yes is all about enablement, and are you able to enable your organisation? Okay, so for an accountant, it's all about yes, no, right, wrong, black, white, approve, not approve. For a finance business partner, that's not what it's about. It's about initiatives and ideas coming across your desk and sort of sitting back and looking at them and thinking, okay, how can I make them a yes? How can I get to yes with these? Now, Obama, when he became president back in 2008, he became renowned for a speech he did called the Yes We Can speech. And in that speech, he talked about if we're not ready or we shouldn't try or we think we can't, then generations of Americans have responded with a simple creed, yes, we can. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. When you think that you're not, accountants will think, oh, we're not ready or we shouldn't try something or we can't do it because of, budget restraints or whatever. Good finance business partners think, yes, we can. We think this is what we want to do and how do I get to yes? Okay, and most of the times, to get to yes, you need to be talking to people about qualitative factors. So a good example of this is if I said to you, coming across your finance desk, I want you to tell me whether it's a good idea financially to raise a child from birth to the age of 5. Work out what all the costs are and give me the financial return on that and whether that's a good idea. Most people would go away and say that's a crazy idea. That'll cost you a fortune and you get no return whatsoever. And yet millions of people out there in the world are doing this on a daily basis. Okay, so that is because there's other things going on like qualitative factors that make people want to do things. And they're the things that you need to think about. Something comes across your desk from somewhere and you look at it and you think, this is a crazy idea. There's no way I would say yes to this. It probably means you're missing something because in their mind, it's a great idea. They've come up with this idea and it's great. And you've got to understand why they think that is. And the only way you can do that is to talk to them and ask questions and understand these qualitative factors. The best tip I can think is whenever you go to say no, think not yet. Think not yet. I'm not there yet. The last thing you want to be known for in finance is known as the sales prevention department. Every organisation hangs off sales. Okay, and if you're the sales prevention department and you're stopping people doing things, you'll get a really bad rap. Your credibility will be shot. You won't be able to influence at all. The best tip that I can give for getting to yes is to provide people options. So when something comes across your desk and you're assessing it and you think, oh, this is a bit of a silly idea, give them options. And one of those options is sort of a no wrapped up in a yes. Okay, if you go back to people with options, you then make them choose between the things that they're asking for, rather than if you say, oh, I suggest this, they can just say no to it. But if you give them options, give them a couple of things, they can choose. I did this the other day with one of my clients where I painted a picture around, it was a credit issue and all this stuff was coming into the credit department because there was poor processes up the line in the organisation. And I said, you can keep those processes the way they are. And what that will mean is you're just going to have to hire another 2 people in credit to deal with all the problems that they have. Or you can give someone authority to go and change all these processes and work out what needs to be done and stop the work coming into the credit department. And of course, what does he choose? He chooses the one that doesn't cost him anything. Get someone to sort out the processes. So this is getting to yes, giving someone options. Okay, it's all about enablement. You're enabling the organisation. You're not stopping it. You're not playing a control role. You're not playing a policeman. You're enabling it. You want the ideas to come alive. Doesn't mean you say yes to everything. Just means you try to get to yes. Okay, number 2 is speak their language. So this is all about empathy and understanding, having empathy for the other functions and understanding how their world works. If you can't speak their language, you're going to find this very, very difficult. So the example I use here is picture yourself, you're in France, you're traveling around France and you go into a shop and you go up to the shopkeeper and you say, do you speak English? And the shopkeeper responds with no and tells you to leave your shop immediately. You go back the next day because that's not effective. That hasn't helped you. You go back the next day and you think, okay, well, I might try to speak French to him and see if that helps. So you go back into the shop the next day, go up to the shopkeeper and you say, do you speak English in French? So you go and say, parlez-vous anglais? And his response will be very different. It'll be a little, and they'll try and help you out a bit, okay? Because you've made the effort to speak his language. You've shown a little bit of respect and appreciation for his situation, and he's more inclined to help you. Now, this actually happened to me in October last year. I was in France traveling around with the family. We're in Paris and we did one of the River Seine cruises, and the waiter came up and I thought, well, I'll try this out. So the waiter came up and sort of stood there and I said, "Parlez-vous anglais?" And his response to me was, "No, I don't, do you?" To which I sort of had a chuckle and I thought, well, he's straight away respected and appreciated the fact that I've tried to make an effort, but he obviously knows that I don't speak French, and so he's making an effort back, and that rapport opened up a conversation that probably wouldn't have been there if I had have just spoken English to him. When you're working with other departments, you're in their land, you're in their world, you need to be able to speak their language and get along with them and understand what's happening with them. The easiest and most beneficial way of doing this is to physically and literally take your desk and go and put it in the middle of their function. Okay, so get out of finance and go and spend time with the other functions, whether that's literally moving your desk, which is a bit hard to do at the moment with COVID-19, but spending time with them, going and spending as much time and being around them while they have conversations about what they're working on. It's really, really easy way of getting your knowledge up to speed around how you learn the language. So think about it, if you went to France, you'd learn French pretty quickly because you're in France. But if you went to Italy, you wouldn't have chances of learning French because they just don't speak it there. Okay, so it's about getting yourself into the areas where you want to learn the things that they talk. Also get an understanding of their KPIs. So really, really important to understand what people's KPIs are and what they're paid on. If you understand what someone gets paid on in terms of a KPI or a bonus, then very quickly you'll learn that that's what their world revolves around and that's what their focus is. Okay, so understanding in depth what someone's KPIs is a really easy way of speaking their language. Okay, third one is keep things simple. So this is all about simplicity. So this is really, really hard. So to make something really, really simple is really, really hard and requires a lot of time and effort. And a lot of finance business partners don't spend that time. And when they turn up to present things to people, they make it complicated and too detailed and too thorough. And people ask a hell of a lot of questions. So if you want to, less is more. You want less. Less is more. It doesn't mean that you don't understand it. In fact, to keep things simple, you have to understand it more than making things complicated. It's really easy to make things complicated. You've got to spend time trying to make things simple. So you could have done all of the analysis. Me, whenever I'm doing work in this space, the analysis is easy. The analysis is 20% of the work. Prettying it up and making it simple to present is 80% of the work. It's not the other way around. And a lot of finance people get into trouble. They do all the work and then they leave themselves 5 minutes to present something and it just comes out really complicated. I'm going to show you a quote which pretty much talks about this. I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead. So think about when you are emailing people and you write a massively long email. It is a lot easier to do that and just data dump a whole lot of stuff down than to actually spend time thinking, what do I need to tell someone and how can I do it really, really succinctly and really, really simply. A couple of techniques around this. The best technique to make things simple for people and to get them to understand things a lot easier is analogy and metaphor. So try and wrap up what you're saying in a metaphor or an analogy that they understand. So something in their world they understand. So a really easy example is if you've got someone who loves football, use a football analogy to explain what you're talking about. So just put yourself into a football world and think of an analogy around football because they love football. They're more inclined to remember what you're talking about and make it easy for them. Another good way, as I said, you want to say less. We want to say less, not more, less. And a good way of doing that, try and test yourself. Try and explain anything in 25 words or less and see how you go. After this, feel free to send me an email in 25 words or less. Explain to me what an accrual is. So if you guys think you're pretty good at this, send me an email. What is an accrual in 25 words or less? The best answer I've got, 10 words. 10 words. So let's see if you guys, if you want to send me in 25 words or less, what is an accrual? and see how hard it is to actually distill your thoughts down into something that's really simple. It's really, really difficult, but the time you spend here is massive. The best finance business partners have clear clarity on what they're talking about, and they make things seem so simple and basic and easy, because all the stuff that's really confusing is backstage. It's all happened and they've thought through all that sort of thing. I'm going to pause there. As I said, I'll get halfway through and ask some questions. There is a question that's popped up. Mohammed, some CFO yeah, Chief Financial No Officer, yeah. Yeah, a lot of CFOs have got a budget that they're working towards and they're saying no, rather than, okay, we're thinking about next year's budget. This could pretty much double it if I said yes. Confirmed expected cost. I'm not sure what that means for Praveen. Then Kaddish, that's a very, very broad question. I just talked about one before where I talked about a simple thing around credit. Probably the biggest success story I had as a finance business partner, I was tasked with a project with sales and marketing to try and understand why, basically a really broad thing to try and improve our margins. We spent 18 months on that project, myself, sales and marketing. We spent probably about 4 weeks locked together in a room, working really closely with each other, going through all the data and finding out a way of how we could execute our idea. It took about 18 months to execute, and a year later brought in, so you're talking about a business that was $40 million profit business, and it brought in $4 million extra within 12 months, so 10% increase in profit. And that was all from a project. And it was all from being separated and put into a room with people with different functions trying to work together. And the learning I got out of that, this is probably 8 years ago. The learning I got out of that is that never think that you know what the best answer is. It's always good to go and talk to the other functions, because they've got a different twist on things and they'll know what's executable and what's not, whereas finance tend to be quite theoretical. It's pretty easy to work out what you should do. It's how you do it and how you're going to get it done, which is the key. And sales and marketing are really good at that. So yeah, that's probably the biggest success story I had. That was when I first started being a finance business partner. As I said, it was 7, 8 years ago. Any other questions? It doesn't look like there's many coming through. That's okay. I'll keep going. There's 3 more principles, and then we'll address anything else at the end. Okay, the next one is, just a second. So the next one is for Praveen. This is all about avoid emails. So avoid emails. So again, this is not a literal term in terms of avoid emails and go back to your desk and unplug Outlook and never use your email again. That's just not practical, especially in light of what's happened in the last month. But avoid emails is a take on communication. Your communication skills with people is really, really important. How you say things to people, the words that you use, the language that you use are really, really important. I'm going to use the screen here. So there's 3 numbers that we need to be really clear on. They are 7, 38, and 55. Okay, this is our percentage of communication. So there was a study done back in the 70s, and that study said that 7% of our communication was words, 38 was tone, and 55 was body language. Okay, which sounds crazy to most people, but this is why I can go to a restaurant and I can look over to my left of the restaurant and I can spot the married couple really, really easy. Don't know what they're saying or how they're saying it, can't hear a thing that they're saying. I know they're a married couple, and I look over here and I can see the couple who are on their first date. I don't know what they're saying to each other, can't hear them, but I know that that's a married couple and that's someone on their first date, all because of body language. All because of body language. So over half of our communication skills come from body language. Now, if you're on email all the time, how much percentage of communication skills are you utilising? 7%. This is emails. When you're writing emails, you're just writing words. Okay, words after words. Now, you can kid yourself and think that you can bring tone in by using capitals or smiley faces, but you don't. Anyone who's reading an email, when they're reading an email, they're reading it from the perspective of their mindset at that time, not from your mindset, from their mindset. So if you write something that you think is quite pleasant, if they're in a bad mood when they read it, they'll read it as something that has a bad tone attached to it. So emails are a really, really low form of communication. Tone, this is telephones. So you go from email to using the phone, 38%, 55% is face-to-face. Getting face-to-face or Skype or Zoom meetings or things like this when you can see people, you'll pick up body language and it'll improve your communication no end. Now, that's just one aspect of it. We think that using emails, we think that it's quicker, we think that it's easier and it's more effective. It's actually slower, it's actually harder, and it is doing massive damage to our relationships with people because people take emails out of context. Half of the time, people aren't even reading them. Okay, this is what we've got to get through our heads. You don't write an email and someone responds to it immediately. There's another study done that suggests that there's over an 80% chance, if you guys all just pick up your phones now, have a look at your phone and have a look at how many unread emails you have, there's an 80% chance that you'll have more than 72 unread emails on your phone. Okay, so that's 72 messages there, that 72 people out there are waiting for you to respond to them. And likewise, you've sent stuff to 72 people that they haven't even looked at yet. So how can it be more effective, faster, easier if they're not looking at it? If you typed out an email, it would take you 3 or 4 times longer to type it out than to ring someone or Skype someone and talk to them. We can type about 40, 50 words a minute. We can talk about 150 words a minute. It's a lot quicker and you'll get a quicker read. Think about an email that you had going backwards and forwards all afternoon. Takes you about 10 minutes to read. Took you all afternoon to go backwards and forwards on it. So you've got to get off emails, get away from emails and start to talk to people. We tell people that there's three reasons you use email. The first is to share information. The second is to set up a meeting, and the third is to confirm what you've agreed on. Those 3 things. Okay. So to share information, set up a meeting, or to confirm what you've discussed. Anything outside of that is a phone call or a Skype meeting or face-to-face. Okay, and that will improve your communication no end. Just trying to get these scribbles off the page. Let me give you some examples of some emails that I've received that just are not helpful. Oops. Okay, so these are real emails that I've received in the last 6 months. Hi Andrew, I have a meeting with a customer tomorrow. Can you please let me know if the following deal is okay to go with? Okay, so that email, I cannot answer that question over email. I have no context. I don't know what the situation is with the customer. Are we in a good place, a bad place? What are you trying to achieve? I don't know any of that. I cannot answer that question with yes or no. And likewise, if I didn't read my emails that night, I wouldn't action that and I wouldn't do anything. So that's not something that you can do over email. This one's a good one. Can you please send me what WA delivers? WA is a region of Australia. It's like a geographic region. I got sent this from someone who was sitting about 10 metres away from me. And so I got up from my desk and I went over and I said, what does your email mean? And she said, well, we're looking at shutting WA down as a region and I just wanted to know what it delivers. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a completely different question with completely different context, and that requires a completely different answer that I'm not going to do over email. Personal favourite, someone sends you an email, FYI, for your information. Okay, anyone who sends me an email with FYI on, I probably aren't going to read it because I don't know what it's for. I get so many emails I wouldn't deal with that. It's not telling me to do anything. It's not creating action from me or sparking me to do something. And then my personal favourite is, can you please give me a call when you are free? It is very urgent, by someone who sent that to me from their phone. Now, I didn't read that for 2 days. And then I responded to them. I said, I've only just got your email 2 days later. And they said to me, I can't even remember what it was about. Okay, if it's that urgent, someone will contact you. So we tell all our finance business partners, the best thing you can do, ignore the first email you get, which is massively controversial. But if it's urgent and it's something important, that person will probably follow it up with another email, or they'll definitely come and see you. Oh, did you get my email? Okay, and if you do that, half of your email traffic will go away. The only rule, don't do it to your boss. If your boss emails you, probably not a wise thing to ignore them. The other rule that I tell people is you get one reply. Okay, if someone sends you an email, you get one reply, you can reply to it. If they reply again, you don't get a second reply. That means you're in a conversation, so you need to go and have a conversation. Likewise, if you send it to someone and they reply, you only get one chance. Once it's gone back twice, that's a conversation. So go and have a conversation. So communication, really important, really hard to do over email, really easy to do face-to-face. You'll pick up body language, you pick up tells, you pick up when someone's lying or being deceptive, and you'll learn a hell of a lot about them if you're face-to-face with them. The fifth principle is an appetite to understand. So this is all about curiosity. Arguably one of the most intelligent people on the planet doesn't even say that he's intelligent. He just says, I'm neither clever nor especially gifted. I'm only very, very curious. Okay, so this is Albert Einstein. So curiosity, the best finance business partners are separated and distinguished by their appetite to understand things and their curiosity. They want to know what's going on. They're very good at picking up, this isn't making sense here, this isn't making sense. What's really going on around here? They're very, very, very attuned to it and very good at it. And they get that skill from doing two things. One is asking good questions, and two is listening. So there's two things attached to this. If you can ask good questions and you can listen well, your curiosity will be fulfilled, and people will think that you're very, very curious. So asking questions, I always say to people, why is a good question? Just don't say why. So there's techniques out there called the 5 whys. Very good technique to try and understand what's going on. Ask why 5 times. The problem with it is if you ask why 5 times, that's like your child playing the why game with you. So it can be a bit confronting. So just wrap the questions up a little differently. Say things like how or what. Those words are Socratic questioning techniques. So Socratic or open questions are really good for when you're trying to find the answers to things. Closed questions that they're called closed because people respond with yes or no. Not good at developing your curiosity and your understanding around things. With listening, most of the time people listen with the intent to respond rather than the intent to understand. So you'll be sitting there listening to what someone's saying and you'll already be ready to talk back to them. That's not good listening. That's listening to respond rather than listening to understand. So there's a few techniques you can use to listen to understand. The best one is silence. So if someone's talking to you, if you do not respond to them and don't say anything, they will generally fill in the gap, and they'll fill that silence up and that void with more information, and you'll get more out of them. Okay, that's especially sales and marketing people who love to talk. Okay, a lot of sales and marketing people, they talk to think. That's the way they think, by talking. Most finance people are a little bit more introverted. We want to think before we speak. Whereas sales and marketing, you let them talk and don't say anything, they will just keep talking and talking, and you'll get gold information out of them if you just let them talk. So silence is a really cool tool there. All right. Last one, the answer to any question you'll ever be asked as a finance business partner, it depends. recently had some criticism online about this one, which is interesting. It depends. So any question that comes across your desk, you straight away need to think it depends. And what that forces you to do is deal with complexity, ambiguity, and start you thinking about context. It depends on what? It depends on the context, because sometimes presented with a whole lot of facts, the answer is this, and other times the answer is that. They could be separated by one day, and the thing that sits in the middle and separates them is context. Okay, context, context, context. You can't underestimate the importance of context when you're trying to answer something as a finance business partner. So it depends. It depends comes with a warning label. You're only allowed to think it. You're not allowed to say it. So if someone comes to your desk and asks you something, and you say it depends, it's not the best look. It's what politicians are taught to do. So no one wants to be known as a politician. So don't think it. Don't say it. Just think it. Think it depends, and then start to explore context. How do you do that? How do you explore context? You use the other 5 principles. So your appetite to understand, questioning and listening, getting off emails and talking to people and having conversations, trying to make things simple and dumb them down into their simplest forms, speaking the language of other departments and trying to get to yes. They're all ways, those principles are how you explore context. And once you explore that context, your answers become so much better, okay? If you don't have a good grasp of context, everything's really linear, basic, and in your organisation, it just will not get executed. So you've got to understand context, and once you do, everything becomes a little bit more easier to execute. Okay, so that's, I can see some questions and comments coming up. That's the 6th principle. What I want you to do is just pause and go through those 6 things and rate yourself out of 10. So give yourself a rating on where you think you are. Getting to yes, are you enabling your organisation? Do you have good empathy and understanding of the functions that you partner? Are you good at keeping things simple? Do you communicate face to face? Are you curious? And do you understand context? Just rate yourself. I'm not going to see your answers, so that's okay. Just rate yourself. Anything under a 7 or an 8, you probably need to start to have a think about how you can improve those things, and just think about the tips that I gave throughout the presentation. And now it's reflection time. What does this mean for you? So there's a couple of questions that popped up. I'm just going to have a read of them. So I'm not sure whether, so Praveen asked, yeah, okay, so sometimes you have heads who want actually, you've got staff that do the work for you. I would always say to the staff that I'm getting them to do something, I would never do it over email, because you can't explain to them what you need to get done unless it's a really simple, basic thing that can be done in 1 or 2 seconds. If you want them to think and explore context, you need to have a conversation with them around what you want to do. Remember, emails haven't existed for, emails didn't exist 20 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago. So we've always, we're able to communicate if we don't have emails. Okay, Praveen, what if you need to keep a record for yourself that you've communicated on meetings, may require minutes to hold good? What are your suggestions? So that's what I said before around there's 3 things. To set up a meeting or to confirm what we talked about. So to confirm what we talked about is exactly what you're talking about there. That's what emails are for. This is what we discussed. There you go. Can you please give asking good questions? So Ben Kaddish, asking good questions. So Google Socratic questioning techniques or open questions. So anything that starts with what, how, why, really good questions, because people can't answer that as no. So if you ask the question to someone that started with do, they'll respond yes or no, end of the discussion. So you want to ask questions that just don't get an answer that's yes or no. So what, how, why, usually good questions. Tips on improving communication skills to choose the right words when you want to send a message or make an announcement, because it's not easy to do so. That's hard to answer without context of the audience that you have. My suggestion is listen to people in your organisation, listen to the words they use and the phrases that they use, and just note them, and then go home and practice, like literally practice saying those phrases, and you'll start to develop your language a lot more. There's key phrases that people use all the time, and some of them are really bad and some of them are really good. When you hear a good one, just take it and then practice it. But language is really, really important. The words that you use and the language that you use, really, really important. Which book would you like to recommend on the FBP topic? I would say my book. Every minute of the day, just Google my name, you'll see my book. It's on Amazon. Have a read of that. Andy Shambrook and myself are looking at doing another book, but that's a fair way away. There's a lot of stuff out there on finance business partnering, and as I said, a lot of it is finance people telling finance people finance stuff. I wouldn't invest too much time in it. It's you know it already. There's no point in reading about it. What you've got to do is you've got to practice these skills. You've got to practice these techniques, and that's really hard to do unless you're practicing in sort of a workshopy environment and getting good at it, and then go and apply it in your organisation. The numbers is the easy bit. The numbers is the real easy bit. It's how you go and deliver that to the organisation and your style and your relationships and your behaviours, which is really important. Not sure if there's any more questions. I'll keep it up there, but I've only got one more page. Andy would have talked about this the other night. We are about to embark on a Middle East Finance Business Partnering Development Program. What that comes with is there's our video lessons. So if you just go to our website, www.thefinancebusinesspartner.com, you'll see the lessons on there. So there's those video lessons, and then we tag them with 9 live virtual workshops. So this will be done by myself and our team. You'll get a good blend of different people delivering different things. It's going to be a Saturday night in Dubai, so 9th of May. It's not too far away. We're pretty excited about it. $4.99 or 5 payments of $99. If you're interested, just reach out to myself or Andy Shambrook. And here's our team. So there's Andy, there's myself, Ian, who looks after North America. He's also from the UK, and Mohammed, who helps us out on the ground there in Dubai. Are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, not sure if Zashan's still there.
Yes, Andrew. Thank you very much for such a great and insightful presentation on the 6 principles of finance business partnering. Just lastly, I would appreciate if you can just throw some light on the current situation of COVID-19, and as you know, the severity of economic and financial implications, and almost all companies are facing the turbulent time. And obviously, the finance business partners are at the forefront of supporting the organizations to navigate through these unprecedented challenges. So just if you can give some advice to the finance professionals and for as a finance business partner, how they can support.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're seeing out there are people doing data analytics on a whole lot of scenarios and all that sort of stuff. And I personally just sit there and say, don't waste time with doing that. Do it as quickly as you can on the back of an envelope, because guess what? Tomorrow you'll have to do it again, and you'll have different variables change. There's very little point in applying data analytics to COVID-19, and the reason is because all of the historical data that you're basing it off is all now redundant. The world's changed. There's different variables, and it's completely different now, and you'll have to think really broadly and in a really ambiguous world around what this means. And it's all about It's all about scenarios and different levels. So this is good, this is bad, this is in between. So I wouldn't spend too much time modelling your pants off. It's just going to be a waste of time. What you want to be doing is talking to people, having conversations, what's working, what's not, especially while we're remote. Like while we're remote, it is massively impactful to people. Some people can sit home on their desk and they're fine. Other people cannot handle being at home by themselves. And so just reaching out to people and talking to people and having conversations is really, really important, more so now than being in the office, more so now. So you need to have those conversations just to see how people are, check in, you know, how's things going. But every day, something new will pop up and you just got to be comfortable with it. I have conversations with a CFO who I coach, and he's like, oh, the amount of work has just increased overnight. And I said to him, just think about it. You wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock now, and you go to bed at, say, 11. So you've got 16 hours. Now, you previously used to work in an office. You don't have to go to that office anymore. You don't have to come home. So there's 2 hours saved. You also have 16 hours. You've got nothing else to do. You have no social life. You have nothing else to do outside of work except probably work. So you've got 16 hours a day you can do stuff. Your weekends, what are you doing on the weekends? There's no social life. You're stuck in your house. So think about the world's no longer 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's just changed overnight. And if you can just, you know, you might do 10 hours a day, but it's spread over a 16-hour period. That's fine. That's fine. So just learn to. The world is very, very different, and you'll just have to work out what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very valid point you raised, Andrew. And because I think most of the finance professionals, they just sit at their place in their departments and they try to do the modeling and scenario planning without even interacting, collaborating with the non-finance business functions. So of course, yeah, we have to meet. Exactly, we have to meet them, and of course, we have to understand first the ground realities with the sales, marketing, IT, HR. Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I'm hearing from, as I said, I coach some people and I'm talking to people. One of the things I'm hearing are people who are just in meetings. So from 9 to 5, their diary's full of like Skype or Zoom meetings, just talking to people and just meeting after meeting. And I say to them, you need to be massively disciplined around your meeting agenda. Why are we meeting? What are we trying to achieve? Do that, stick to that, and then move on to the next meeting. Otherwise, you're just going to be on Zoom meetings for an hour when you don't need to be. So just be massively disciplined around your meeting agenda. We're here to do this. This is the objective. Once we've done it, we all close off and we go and do what we need to do next. If we want to talk about something else, well, then we'll have to do that another time.
Right. I think there is one more question from Irfan, that you have mentioned few crucial skills for being effective at FBP. So what stands out as the top 3 must-have skills for the future role of FBP?
Relationships and your ability to communicate with people is number one, far and away number one. If you can't deal with other people and can't flex your style and be adaptive, you no chance whatsoever. Yeah, so that all leads into those 6 principles. Are probably, hang off those. They're the things that if you do those well, you'll be pretty good, and they generally revolve around relationships. All the finance business partnering stuff out there at the moment that talks about different analytical techniques and, you know, modeling and data analysis and all that sort of stuff, like dashboards. Don't worry about dashboards. Dashboards can be built by IT. If you become brilliant at writing Python and Power BI and all these dashboards, that's not going to get you to a CFO spot. The CFOs aren't being hired because they're good at, you know, drawing dashboards up. Because most of the time, dashboards are just the outcomes of everything that's happened in the organisation. The people who use them generally know the answer before it pops up on the dashboard anyway. So I wouldn't spend much time on that. I'd spend time building your relationships with people and being able to work out how people respond to things and dealing with humans. because everything's complex. There's no right or wrong answer. As I said before, sometimes the answer is that, sometimes it's that, and context sits in the middle, and you've just got to understand that. There's no model or no data analytics out there that explains that.
Yeah, right. I think still we have some 5 minutes left, so we can take some more questions from Venkatesh. How do we keep ourselves as finance folks motivated, as ours is a thankless job?
Sorry. How do we keep ourselves as finance folks motivated as ours is a thankless job? Yeah, that's a tough one. I always, I talked before about analogy or metaphor. Think about yourself as a pilot. So you're a pilot of a plane and you're locked away in that cockpit and you're there flying a massive hunk of metal around the sky with 200 people in the plane, and they owe them your lives, because if you crash that plane, everyone's dead. And when the plane lands, everyone gets off the plane and no one thanks you. No one thanks you. And that's okay. You've just got to be comfortable with it. Just got to be comfortable with it. That's the job. If you do really well at finance business partnering and you build your credibility and then start to influence people, you'll get the thanks. People may not say it, but they will appreciate you. If stuff keeps coming across your desk and you're always busy because all the problems of the organization keep coming across your desk, that's the thanks. That's the sign that you're good at what you do, because guess what? You don't go to the idiot in the corner who knows nothing to solve the problems. You go to the best people to solve the best problems, and that's the thanks. That's the signal of the thanks. I don't know a CEO who's out there who's running a company where a board says thanks. It just doesn't happen. As you get through, you get thanks in different ways, and they're indirect. But if you're getting a lot of things coming across your desk, that's thanks in itself. That's thank you.
Okay, I think no more questions. So if you have any more questions relating to finance business partnering, of course, you can reach out to Andrew on the LinkedIn and or through our platform as well if you have any questions. So we will be sending you the recording as well of this session. And I think that's all from our side. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Andrew, for your time and for such insightful presentation. And
no
thank you,
problem.
audience.
And, thanks for having me along. It's good to see this sort of stuff out there and being pulled together so quickly, and yeah, being a part of it. So thanks everyone, and thanks for everyone who signed in and listened.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. And for the audience, just we will be having another session at 7 p.m. Dubai time today evening. So that will be on the communication storytelling presentation by Zaid Kalia. So we will see you again at 7 p.m. in the evening. Thank you, everyone, and thank you very much, and take care. Stay safe.
Cheers.